All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music and current concert tours that are going on, and my opinions on what's happening out in the world of live music and doing it in real time for a few real people out there just like you and just like me. Now, Sammy Hagar is out there on the road. Basically, it's like Sammy Hagar and the Circle with Joe Satriani playing guitar. That's kind of what it is. And they've got this guy, was it Ray Thistlewaite or something like that, playing keyboards. I might have messed up his name. The traditional spelling of both of those names, I think, was different than what I'm accustomed to seeing. So if I'm butchering that, I'm sorry, Mr. Ray. Um, so the band is equipped really to handle the Hagar era Van Halen, plus some Sammy solo stuff, and the Satch Boogie, I believe. Joe Satriani goes off and does the Satch Boogie. And I was thinking back to when I first started doing this channel, and I got this CD by this band called Sweet Mary Jane, right? I know what you're thinking by the name, right? Well, I had a discussion. I think I was friends with the guitarist, and he and I used to talk. And this guy, Tomas, the lead singer, Tomas Berggren, I think his name is, he is as close to Sammy Hagar as I've really heard anybody. When you think of it, who sounds like Sammy Hagar? So this was 2016, 2017 when I started talking about this. And there's this one tune called Fire in Your Eyes, but the entire album has kind of like this Van Hagar flavor to it. But Fire in Your Eyes is a song that Sammy Hagar could sing or could have written. I don't know if he could sing it now. Um, and so I'm listening to the tour thus far, and it's just confirming what I've been saying the last couple of years is that this is getting very difficult for older bands to go out there and just kind of, I don't know, break even with it, you know? I mean, yes, our expectations are lower. They have to be lowered. I mean, if you're going to go see Sammy Hagar, and I told people, yeah, go see it. Why did I tell people to go see it? Because this should be the last run. I mean, I can't imagine these guys doing another tour celebrating the music of Van Halen. I'm thinking Sammy will retreat into his one-off occasional performances and not do these full-fledged tours. Musically speaking, I don't think he has that much more to say. And as we know, new material doesn't do very well when you put it out there and you're a classic or vintage artist. Call them vintage artists, right? Because that's the truth. But this is why I always say there should have been another generation. There should have been yet another group of classic rock bands that we'd all be listening to. And these bands would be on the radio right now, but they're not. I mean, bands like this. Now, this didn't go anywhere. These guys, I think they had some internal issues, some personal issues, and it folded up, but there was no support system for it. And so there's nothing coming along to replace these guys who are really struggling. And I'm going to be honest. People are sending me their videos from these concerts, and I'm listening. And it's not about the quality. I hear this a lot. Well, you know, you're watching a cell phone video. It's not just the quality of the recording. It's where this song is tuned when it starts. And you don't have to be a trained ear to recognize that that song is starting in the wrong place. It's starting in a lower key. And it's not progressing up to the key that it normally progresses to. And in some cases, it's not just the singing, but it's the guitar playing. Now, if the song is being played like the original, and then it's being sung like somebody who's struggling to sing the parts that you're familiar with from the original, then that's a lose-lose for me. That, I mean, you're better off, you know, starting the song lower or reworking everything. Like, sit down with some acoustic guitars and just rework everything and do a respectable job, do an unplugged performance of whatever, all of the songs or most of them. Maybe there are a couple that you can sing. 5150, for instance, doesn't sound too bad. But there are songs that I'm listening to going, wow, this just, Sammy was a beast as a singer. Sammy Hagar was one of the best rock singers ever. So our memory of Sammy, much like our memory of guys like Peter Cetera who quit, right? He said, I'm not going to go out there and destroy my reputation. I want people to remember me as the guy who could hit those notes, who had a distinctive voice, and not somebody whose voice you can barely, understand or remember because it's so different. Now, Sammy's voice still sounds like Sammy. That's not the issue. He still sounds like Sammy Hagar. It just climbing that ladder is, and this is some steep climbing, man. This is tough. I know Michael Anthony is there to kind of bail him out, and I hear Michael singing the high harmony parts. And I think that new keyboardist, he's helping out with some of those vocals. I think even Jason Bonham is doing some decent background vocals from what I've seen. Maybe it's not Jason, but I'm pretty sure he's helping out. So the reason I'm doing this video is we've got to come to an understanding that you buy these tickets and go see these shows with built-in low expectations of what you're going to do. The problem for me, as someone who saw pretty much I saw Chickenfoot in 2010 or whatever it was, and they were on fire. They were fantastic. Sammy hadn't lost a step. They were writing articles at the time because I think Sammy was like 60, 61 years old, and he was just killing it still. And people were surprised. But then a few years later, that started to change. You can't maintain that forever. And, unless you're, again, John Anderson, who sings this sort of soft kind of falsetto style, which is easier. Mickey Thomas, he's kind of a freak of nature. There are a few guys that have maintained their vocal skill set, but many of them have not. Most of them have not. And I always go back to everyone wasted time. Like for 20 years, people were debating about Van Halen. Will they get back together? Who will they bring in? They brought Dave in. They probably could have had another 10 good years with Sammy if they had, gotten their act together and stopped fighting over stupid things. But, it doesn't help when your most important guy is unable to play because he's addicted to whatever. And I think that's why everything just ground to a halt. And now you've got this tour, which probably the most anticipated tour of the summer, but from the footage I've seen, fairly disappointing. Now, let me talk about Joe Satriani. Joe Satriani is, Sammy put this out yesterday. Joe Satriani is doing a good job playing the notes that need to be played, playing the chords, and getting some of Eddie's idiosyncrasies down. However, I listen to these songs, and there's truly a lack of hit you in the face, punch you in the gut, energy and guitar riffery, if that's not a word, but I just made it up. The stuff that it just oozed out of Eddie's guitar, and it had no restraint, and it would go wherever it wanted to go at any moment. It was like he had a guitar on fire, and he was just trying to restrain it from completely melting, right? That's the way Eddie Van Halen played. And you really end up missing him. You just do. These songs are all written with him in mind. If he didn't do some of the music, then he did some of the actual songwriting, but most likely he was the architect of a good portion of the music, and you would build a lyric around that. And it just, I don't know, man. I'm listening and I'm missing Eddie. I like Joe, but I mean, you just miss Eddie because he was so distinctive, and there was so much energy and power in that guitar. Even on that last tour that Ed did, he was still crunching away on that thing, and it just had such power. And now, Joe has a different kind of energy. Joe is kind of like, it's hard to describe, but Joe's style is different. He's explosive, but he's like a mild mannered, explosive guitar player. Eddie was like knocking crap over, and just stuff would go everywhere and it would work out fine because he knew how to bring it back, or he would go somewhere and you wouldn't know musically where that was going, but then it made sense because Eddie would make it make sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just said it anyway. So, bottom line is, I miss Ed. The vocals on this tour, I love Sammy. If somebody sends you this video, which I don't think anyone will, but Sammy, I love you, man. You're an ambassador for the sport. You're the guy holding the torch still, and you're trying to carry that torch. I would say after this tour, sell stuff, go into business. I know he's already got like a lot of things that he makes money from, including that tequila and all, the Cabo Wabo brand and all that stuff. I would focus on that. I think you've left a great mark on this industry that people will not forget. And this tour, I think people needed this to kind of heal from the whole Eddie's here and then he's gone the next day. But there's nobody on that stage really that competes with the memory of Eddie Van Halen. His brother didn't want to play. It's great to have Michael. I think Michael, again, ends up being the strongest person because, number one, he's still got that high vocal. And from what I hear, he's still 100% singing. And the bass playing is good. It's solid. And just having him up there, I think, is a link to the new and to the old. I mean, he's the guy. He's one of the founding members of Van Halen. And so a lot of people love seeing him up there. It's sad that you've only got one, though, out of all the guys that are still here. Seeing Dave up there, I think, would be too cartoony, and Dave sings worse than Sammy. So that doesn't solve the problem here. What you need maybe is just do this tour in memory, and then that should be it, guys. That really needs to be it. The problem is they're making lots of money. We just learned today that Bruce Springsteen is a billionaire. He made $380 million last year touring, 300, and he missed shows. So number one, they're charging way too much for tickets. And number two, expectations for all of this music, it's just too low. It's like, if you're going to spend that much money, you might as well see something a little more coherent, like, hey, does this sound like the music I hear on the radio? Yeah, sounds like it. But then people start playing or people start singing and you're like, okay, yeah, I paid a lot of money for this and just not working out. It's really going to be tribute bands, cover bands. That's going to be the future if you want this music performed accurately. Maybe vocally you're going to be missing something because you're going to have a singer that just can't deliver. But I'd rather hear a guy whose voice is a little different from the guy who sang the songs, who can actually hit the notes and doesn't make me wince. And I've been wincing a lot watching a lot of these videos. So, all right, enough bashing. I'm sorry. I love Sammy Hagar. I love Van Halen. And I liked this thing when it came out. I just wanted to show this again. They'll be in shock if anybody in this band is still around that I'm featuring this, but go listen to a tune called Fire in Your Eyes by Sweet Mary Jane. The video, which is a really lousy video for the song, it's just not a good, it's just, it was very low budget, okay? But the song itself has all the makings of a Sammy Hagar hit single back in the 1980s or whenever. Just sounds like something that Sammy would have written and performed, and vocally has a lot of that Sammy Hagar spirit to it. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching. God bless everyone. Pray for peace in the Middle East, but more importantly right now here in America, pretty much everywhere, you could pray for peace, because the world is kind of on fire. And it's good to be alive in this time frame because, man, it's a front row seat to chaos and crazy. And I'm here and you're here. So thank God every day for that. Try to make a difference, though, in your community because that's really the only way out. It's getting involved and also voting the right way, too. You might want to do that. That's just a little suggestion. And I will see you soon.